I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number 189, Allowing. Merry Christmas, my ladies. Today is Christmas Eve. I am recording this Christmas Eve night. We just finished all of our festivities, and it was a beautiful day, and my husband said, "You're going to go record a podcast right now?" And I said, "Yes, this is exactly what I want to do today to round out my day. I want to tell you a little bit about my day. I had so many thoughts, so many ideas for podcasts, so many things I was thinking that I would share with you. And what it really came down to was this. I wanted to start with one of the things that I thought about today, one of the biggest lessons that I just kind of had today, and that was about allowing. And today was a beautiful day. We had church bright and early. My twin sister and I sang in church. So we got to church early so that we could practice. And it was so fun. We had a pianist and a guitarist and two violinists. And I felt like a rock star. I felt like we had a whole band. And it was so fun. And we sang this beautiful song. It's called Light of the World. And it was so gorgeous. And our congregation, mostly our meeting today was mostly musical numbers, which is always my favorite because that's the best part about Christmas, is all the songs. And they were so beautiful. And then there was one message that just really hit me that I am sure I will be sharing with you guys on future podcasts because it just sparked all kinds of ideas. But then afterward, we just spent the whole day with family and friends, and it was so beautiful. We always act out the nativity. My kids always act out the nativity. We read from Luke 2, and we have some legit costumes now because we were in The Chosen, and so I made costumes, and so we have very appropriate clothing and costumes for all kinds of children, and it was so cute. And then we did this thing with bells. Have you guys done this? A friend of mine, she came over and she had bells that then you play, on the screen. I'm not explaining this very well, but all the bells play a different note, and we played, Christmas songs on the bells, and the kids got to do it too, and that was really fun. Anyway, it was just a beautiful day, and as I was experiencing today, I was reflecting on where we were a year ago, where I was a year ago emotionally. And today was just kind of a come full circle moment. And as I thought of that, I actually looked up what it means to come full circle because I wanted to make sure I was using it correctly. And it really is just so fascinating. If you guys think of a circle, if you think about drawing a circle on a piece of paper, you start at one point and you go around and you come back exactly where you started. And yet everything looks different. When you began, before you started, there was nothing on the paper. It was completely blank. And yet when you go all the way around, even though you're back in the same starting point, now you have a circle. And as you go around, because you made a circle, you've had the experience and the perspective of making that circle. Think of yourself as if you are being drawn, as if someone else is holding the pen, which maybe is God, right? And your life is going, and now you are the one moving along that line, moving along that circle. So you start in one place, and then you're constantly moving. And as you experience things, your perspective just shifts a little bit, inch by inch, just a little bit by degree. And I was thinking about this earlier, just how fascinating it is. If you turn your head just 1 degree in either direction, how much more your vision and your perspective opens up. And this will be a podcast for another day, but think about yourself as you do that. Imagine yourself spinning in a circle. Imagine yourself walking in that circle and how you would experience and all the things that you would see that you wouldn't have seen if you hadn't created and gone through that circle. So when we come full circle, even though you might end at the same point you started, you are completely different because of what you've gone through. And you are completely different because of how you experienced and the perspective that you gained through completing that circle. Does that make sense? So when you look up the phrase come full circle, it says to return to a past position or situation. And so again, think of that circle of where you started, or it's after a long series of events or changes, the same situation that you started with still exists. So ladies, think about yourself. I know there are so many of you that are on this healing journey, right, from your husband's pornography problem. And it may seem like through that healing journey, you might get to a point where you think, man, I'm exactly where I started. He isn't changing. He's still doing the exact same thing, right? The same situation that I started with still exists. But ladies, when you embark on that journey intentionally, when you choose to go through that experience, to go through that change and through that healing, when you choose to allow yourself to be changed, when you choose to allow your perspective to shift, when you choose to allow yourself to really experience healing and growth and progression, and when you take full ownership of that, you are changed. So even though you might enter or end in a spot where the same situation still exists, maybe your husband hasn't changed, maybe he hasn't moved on, maybe he hasn't done anything differently, or it's still there and you thought it was getting better and it's not, and it's still there, and you're in that same situation that existed before, you are completely different. And if you're not, then that means you haven't moved yet. Does that make sense? Right? We think we're moving, but we're not actually moving. We're just waiting, and the circumstance stays the same. The only way that you're going to come full circle and be different, even if the circumstance is the same, is if you move. If you don't allow yourself to move along that circle, if you don't allow yourself to start going forward, you will stay in the same place and your circumstance won't change, but neither will you. And it will still affect you the same way, and you will still have the same tension and the same anger and the same emotional baggage, and you will still have the same triggers that you're living with today. But if you move and if you start navigating and start pushing yourself forward, yes, maybe you go in a circle, but at the end of that circle, even though the circumstance will be the same, even though the situation will be exactly the same, you will be different, and that changes everything. That is what I kept thinking about over and over and over today, was allowing yourself to heal, allowing all kinds of things, allowing yourself to move, allowing yourself to heal, allowing yourself to feel positive emotion, because that's part of healing too. I thought about this today and I made a post about it on Instagram, and it resonated with so many of you, and you left comments and I got messages, and I'll read you what I wrote because it was just how I felt. And I've posted similar things about this before. This is exactly what I wrote, word for word. I said, it's not always easy to be merry. I almost made a post. I posted a picture of my family on Christmas of what we looked like today. And I was going to post something like Merry Christmas. And then I was just remembering how not merry I was last year, how hard it was to be merry, how miserable I was, how heavy it felt, how overwhelming everything was that I was going through with my husband, and how I felt very far from being merry. And I thought about that. And I'll get into how I felt today, but I said, you know what? I don't really want to make a post that says Merry Christmas. I mean, I do, but I don't really, okay? Part of me really didn't want to. And this is what I wanted to say. I said, you know, it's not always easy to be merry. Sometimes dealing with pornography in your marriage can seem overwhelming. And it's difficult to allow yourself to experience positive emotion. It almost feels irresponsible. But I challenge you to find even moments of joy and merriness today. Christ is born, and through him, all is conquered, even this. That's the post that I made. And I've talked a lot about this before. This is not the first time that I've said this, but I know that sometimes when we go through something as heavy or as important as your husband going through a pornography problem and all the ways that that affects you, it can seem almost irresponsible to allow yourself to feel positive emotion. It almost seems like you're betraying yourself. It's like, wait, you're not taking this seriously. You almost don't want to laugh with him. You don't want to love him. You don't want to have positive feelings towards him, or even just in general, because it feels like a betrayal. It feels like your best friend is cheating on you, right? It feels like, you know, when you tell your best friend, like, oh, we hate that person, and then she goes and like sits by him, you're like, what are you doing? It feels like that, right? It's like, no, you can't do that. We're supposed to be angry at this person for the rest of our lives, right? You guys with me? And that's what it feels like. It feels very wrong sometimes to feel positive emotion. And that's why I wanted to talk about that today. I wanted to challenge you to give yourself permission to allow positive emotion. our brain wants to fight it. Our brain wants, which seems so bizarre. We would think that our brain wants us to just feel better. It doesn't. What your brain wants to do is make things easier. And so if that's just keeping the status quo of misery, then that's what it's going to want to do, even if it's Christmas Eve, right? Your brain's going to say, no, I don't really want to be married. What I want to do is remember how bad my husband hurt me every single day for the rest of my life, because it validates my story. And that feels really good. So in a strange way, it feels really good, but also it really doesn't. But when we learn to allow positive emotion, that's when we start to move that needle forward. Does that make sense? It is okay. I want to challenge you to allow positive emotion, allow hope, allow peace, allow joy, allow merriness, even moments of it. And that's the other thing, is sometimes we think of these things as all or nothing. We almost think of it as a state of being. Either I'm peaceful or I'm not. Either I'm merry or I'm not. Right? Either I'm the Grinch or I'm Cindy Lou Who. We think it's just one or the other, and it's not. It can be moments, and even if you can just start allowing yourself to practice feeling moments of positive emotion, it will start to move you forward in that circle. Does that make sense? You guys with me? So I want to give you guys that opportunity to allow positive emotion. The other thing that I want to give you guys is the opportunity to allow healing. And healing is really that movement of coming full circle. Healing, as I've thought about today, so I told you about how, miserable last Christmas was. Okay. Today was different. Today was beautiful. And definitely moments of joy and lots of laughter and smiling and just contentment. And you'd have to know a lot of specifics and details that I'm not going to give you right now. But it really was so powerful for me all day long. I just sat there and realized that you have to allow yourself to heal and to be healed. Not only do you have to allow yourself to do the work of healing, but then after you've done the work of healing, you have to allow your brain to sit there. Does this make sense? When you look up the definition of allow, which I did because I like to do stuff like that, it's a verb, okay? To allow, you have to actively do it. It's not something that just happens, okay? Number one is to give someone permission to do something, right? So you have to give yourself permission. If I want to allow myself to do something, number one, I have to give myself permission to do it. If I want to allow myself to heal, then I have to give myself permission to do it. I have so many women who talk about, for example, joining my coaching program. They say, okay, I want to heal. Then they have to give themselves permission to do it, to take action toward it. Remember, allow is a verb. You can't just wait for it to come to you. You have to take action toward it. And if that looks like joining coaching for you, then you have to give yourself permission to do it, which is tricky because a lot of it is because it costs money and it has some time involved, and there's some other people involved, right, in the group. And so it might bring up a lot of our stuff. It brings up our fears, our insecurities, our self-doubt, our worry over finances. It brings up all that stuff. And you have to give yourself permission to do it. Does this make sense? In the same way that you give yourself permission every week to listen to the podcast, or you give yourself permission to eat healthier, or to exercise, or to go back to school, or to spend time with your kids, whatever it is that you allow yourself to do, is you giving yourself permission, okay? So when you allow yourself to heal, if you want to allow yourself to heal, number one, it's an action. You have to take action. And listening to a podcast, ladies, is passive. It's not active. I know it feels active and it's great. It's awesome, but it's not what I'm talking about. That's not action, okay? Taking action is very different than listening and absorbing. Does that make sense? So notice that number one, allowing is a verb and it requires action. Number two is that you have to give yourself permission to do it. If you want to allow yourself to heal, you have to give yourself permission to heal. And that might look like letting go of your stories. That might look like letting some things go, maybe letting some money go so that you can hire a therapist or join coaching. Maybe it looks like letting some time go so that you can invest it into your own healing. Whatever that looks like, it's going to require you giving yourself permission to do it. And that's a really big hang up for so many of you because you don't have the confidence in making decisions. So many of you struggle making decisions because, hey, I made this decision once and it turned out that it wasn't what I thought it would be. I thought I made this decision, I gave myself permission to marry this guy, and that hasn't turned out the way that I thought. So now I don't really trust myself to make decisions, right? You want somebody else to do it for you because you feel like that's easier. Of course it's easier, because then you don't have to actually live with your own consequences or give yourself permission to do it and then have your own back on it. But giving yourself permission is the only way that you start moving forward. Remember, keep that visual of that circle. It's the only way that you start moving forward in that circle. Okay? Number 2, the other definition of the word allow as a verb is to give the necessary time or opportunity for. And this is the definition that I thought of most today. Because number 1, I have actively allowed my healing and pursued it relentlessly, especially over the past year. But yes, over my life and my marriage. And yes, I have given myself permission to heal. I have hired coaches, I have done thought downloads, I have actively processed my emotion. I have worked so hard and given myself permission to do so many things to come full circle. But what was fascinating about today is I was just sitting here recognizing that I was sitting here on Christmas Eve reflecting on the difference between where I am now and where I am a year ago, and how my brain was uncomfortable with where I am today. My brain wanted to be like, oh wait, are we okay? Is this it? We're good? Are you sure? It wanted to be hesitant in my comfort, in my contentment, in my peace. My brain didn't want to sit there. I had to allow it on purpose, give the necessary time or opportunity for being healed. If you want to allow yourself to heal, you have to give yourself the time or opportunity for it to happen, right? If you want to allow yourself to be an incredible swimmer, you actually have to create an opportunity for it to happen. You have to allow it. And that takes action, ladies, right? If I want to allow healing, then I have to create an opportunity for healing. And then I have to allow it to sit there. Allow the healing that has already taken place to just settle in. And my brain wants to go on high alert. Ladies, you know this. Ladies who have husbands who are past this and have maybe been clean for X amount of time, and your brain is still on high alert and you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is when we practice allowing healing. When we give the necessary time or opportunity for healing. When we say, yes, I can allow this. I can create the opportunity for being healed to be where I am. I don't have to fight it. I don't have to go back to where I was. I can just allow it. I can create the opportunity for it to exist in my life, for me to exist here. And maybe I'm not totally solid here yet. Maybe it feels uncomfortable. Maybe it feels a little scary. And that's okay. I can learn to allow it. I can create the opportunity, give it the necessary time or opportunity for it to be here, for me to be healed. And then the last definition of allow, again, a verb, remember, is to admit the truth of or to concede. Isn't that fascinating? Now, when we think about it in terms of healing, if I'm going to allow healing, then I have to admit or concede to the truth that I am healed. And it feels so crazy for me to say that. And I know that our brain fights that so hard. Our brain fights the idea that we are healed or that it's possible. For those of you who don't feel healed yet, think about the possibility or the hope that you could be. Our brain doesn't even want to concede that. Our brain doesn't even want to allow the possibility that it could be true, right? But that's what allowance is. Allowance is to admit that there is truth in it, that it is possible to heal, or that if you are healed, that it is true that you are. Because again, our brain wants to say that it was a fluke. Oh, that's not possible. It only happened once. It's never going to happen again. You don't get too comfortable, right? Again, that's kind of the waiting for the other shoe to drop. Our brain doesn't want to admit the truth or concede that we are now healed, or that we are on the healing journey, or whatever however you want to phrase it. It was so fascinating, ladies, to sit here today and to notice my brain feel hesitant about where I am emotionally, even though emotionally was very positive today. And a year ago, I was much more solid and much more confident in where I was, even though it was miserable. Does this make sense? Right? I didn't struggle today, but I was just very conscious of allowing myself to be healed, allowing positive emotion, allowing myself to recognize that I have come full circle. And ladies, even if you come full circle and your situation is still the same and you end up in the same circumstance that you began, if you allow yourself to heal along that journey, you will be different. And if you are different, it makes everything change. Your marriage, your relationship, your experience of life, so that instead of just existing from day to day and staying in the same spot emotionally, physically, mentally, you actually grow and expand and heal. So eventually what can happen, if you allow it, is you will be healed 100%. And it's a beautiful place to be. Again, I'm not going to share all the details of what happened today. But I can tell you guys that there was a beautiful moment where I recognized that I had come full circle. And even though it was in a very similar circumstance as I was a year ago, I was completely different. And that's what changed. That's what led me to have a different Christmas. And as we lead into the new year, I know there's so many posts, I've been seeing them for weeks about how you're going to start next year, and are you in the same place last year as you were now, and what's going to be different between now and next year. And I'm going to do all those podcasts too. So just get ready. Okay. They're coming because it's such a great time to reflect. And I want to offer, ladies, if you're reflecting on your experience this year, this Christmas, today, whenever you happen to be listening to this podcast episode, then I want you to question, all right, am I where I want to be? And am I in the same spot I was a year ago? And is that where I want to be next year? And am I going to allow myself to move? Am I going to give myself permission? Am I going to create the opportunity for? Am I going to admit the truth of how to go forward? And if so, ladies, and if you're ready, then I want to invite you to come join me. I have a program that's always open to you so that when you're ready, and I think you are, you can sign up right away, and that's when we start. That's when we take you from standing still to moving forward. And it's completely independent of your circumstances. That's the beautiful part about all of this. I think that's the coolest part about everything that I teach, is that no matter what you're going through, it applies. It applies whether it's 5 years from now or yesterday, or whether you're trying to lose weight, or you have a difficult child, or you have a husband with a pornography problem. It applies to all of it. And it doesn't matter if your circumstance changes. I think that's kind of one of the coolest things about life, is that we are completely independent beings. You can create yourself into whatever you want, regardless of what's happened in your life. You are not defined by what goes on around you unless you choose to make it so. If you want to live the rest of your life as the porn addict's wife, you totally can. And there is no one that could tell you different, and I would not judge you for it. But you don't have to. And if you're ready to start changing, and if you're ready to start moving forward so that you can have that come full circle moment and really allow healing, then I would love to help you. I love you, ladies. I hope you have a beautiful Christmas. I want you to remember again to allow yourself to feel moments of joy and peace and contentment and happiness and merriness and magic. I love you, ladies. Merry Christmas. I'll talk to you next week. Take care.